Okay, hello. Let's start with our second roundtable discussion today. So we're looking at, well, we've got through two things, first of all. I'm going to be very strict, first of all, on speaking time. So if you've spoken 5 minutes, I will let you know, and we'll have to cut you off after 7 minutes, as they do in the Parliament. Secondly, after the discussion, we will take questions together, and we'll leave time for the speakers to respond to the questions together at the end, after all the questions have been asked. Right, let's start our discussion now. Just like to say that the Economic and Social Committee has produced a recommendation planning for a support plan for transition for communities and regions depending on coal production. That was supposed to be based on 3 main pillars: political, civic, and social dialogues, economic investment, as well as in society and the environment, investment in education, training, research, development, innovation, and culture. And today, as we speak, I'd like to welcome Cornelia and the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, thank them for their work. Thanks to them, we're holding a very important economic, political, and social dialogue involving trade unions and other social actors, all of whom play a key role in this development. We're talking about 240,000 directly involved jobs and more than 1 million indirectly involved jobs. So now we're going to be looking at the question from the point of view of workers, hoping to produce answers and solutions. So we have with us Benjamin Denis from the trade union of the European Trade Union Confederation, who is going to be speaking first. Dennis, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is indeed Benjamin Denis. I'm representing the ETUC, which is the European Trade Union Confederation. We represent 90 national trade union confederations coming from roughly 40 countries. So we represent trade unions from EU countries, but also from non-EU countries. And we also represent 10 EU-wide sectorial trade union federations. So as you can imagine, being the representative of so many trade union organizations means that I feel like a rock star today. Means that you have to deal with and to cope with a wide set of interests, a wide set of situations in terms of energy mix, in terms of economical situation, etc. Speaking in terms of climate change more specifically, it means that, of course, sometimes we have lively, challenging discussions with the colleagues who have to deal with the concrete impacts, social impacts of decarbonization on a daily basis. Impacts which are not always easy to distinguish from other trends, other phenomena. The decarbonization, the fight against climate change is not happening in a vacuum. We live in an economy where many workers have been hardly hit by the consequences of, just to mention a few trends, globalization, liberalization of many sectors, attempts to weaken social protection systems, attempts to weaken workers' rights. Many colleagues all in many countries in Europe have been brought to court just because they used their right to strike. So we have to bear in mind that decarbonization is taking place in that social and political context. Now, I would like to start my intervention by saying a few words about what just transition means from a theoretical point of view, because I've heard that some people in the room still identify just transition with a sort of delaying strategy. it's not at all a delaying strategy. What just transition means? Just transition, first of all, means that we accept the need for a transition. One slogan that we frequently use in the trade union movement is "there is no job on a dead planet." For many years now, at the ETUC level, but also at the international trade union level, we acknowledge that the clock is ticking. We have endorsed, we have welcomed the collective objective put in the Paris Agreement. Countries will have to keep committed to keep global warming well below 2 degrees and will make efforts to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. We have welcomed that. It concretely means that the world should become carbon neutral in a few decades. For the EU, it means that the EU should approach carbon neutrality around 2050. We can discuss the exact timing, we can discuss whether it will be an absolute goal or a net goal, but this is the direction. And the ETUC at the executive committee level, which is the highest political level you may have within the European trade union movement, has acknowledged, has welcomed that commitment. Now, the issue is not anymore either or to decarbonize, but how to do it. And as trade unions, we are the ones, as I said, facing with the daily reality of workers. So when we use the word just transition, it means, okay, we accept the transition, but we also know that there are different ways, different strategies that may be contemplated in order to decarbonize the economy. And the one we support, the one we promote, to put it in a few words, is based on the creation of quality employment, because we think, we still believe that there is no social justice without quality employment. Workers' participation, it's absolutely essential to allow the workers to have their say, including on the pace, including on the timing. Yes, indeed, it's a political discussion that must be discussed with workers. Skills, education, workers that work in sectors which still highly rely on CO2 intensive activities must have direct access to retraining programs, upskilling, reskilling programs, and public authorities must take the lead in organizing that kind of initiatives. We need strong social protection systems, because in many sectors, in many regions which still highly rely on CO2 intensive activities, the workforce is also on average at an age which make extremely difficult for a significant part of the workers to find a new job in the green or the low carbon economy. And last but not least, workers' rights must be protected and must be enhanced in many countries, because if you contest the right to workers to organize themselves to defend their rights, there is no just transition at all. Now, concretely, what do we do at EU level to promote the idea of just transition? Basically, as I said, first of all, we have tried to influence the Paris Agreement. And in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, there is a clear reference to just transition. Countries committed through the Paris Agreement to base their decarbonization strategies on the concept of just transition and on decent work. We would have hoped to put that principle in the core of the agreement. It has not been possible for many reasons, but keep in mind that this is in the Paris Agreement, this is in the preamble, and we see that presence of just transition within the preamble as a major political commitment from countries who have signed the Paris Agreement. That hook must be used to go to member states, to go to a country, and to say them, okay, you committed to decarbonize your economy, you committed to pay attention to just transition and decent work. Now, when you will be implementing your decarbonization policies, when you will draft your NDC, so the nationally determined contribution, you have to focus on the principle of just transition. Two things at the EU level. We can enter into more details during the Q&A, during the discussion. First, we have concretely proposed to set up a Just Transition Fund which would be created in the context of the revision of the emissions trading system for the post-2020 period. The idea is to keep aside a certain amount of emissions allowances, to auction them, and to use the money generated by this auctioning process to support workers and the communities they belong to from regions and from sectors which still highly rely on CO2 intensive activities. Second pillar of our strategies regarding EU and member states, it's the governance process. You are maybe aware of the fact that last week the Commission launched a big package called the Winter Package in the context of the Energy Union, and in that big package you have notably one piece of draft legislation about governance, which is based on a system of policy planning and reporting. We would like to see the Commission to develop concrete guidelines in the governance process in order to force or to invite strongly member states to pay attention to the social dimension of decarbonization. The idea is you cannot shift from an economy which still highly rely on carbon-intensive activities to an economy which will be carbon neutral in a few decades without any impact on the labor market. These impacts must be anticipated, must be planned. Countries must assess the situation and foresee a set of policy instruments to accompany the change, to tap and maximize the quality employment creation through new opportunities, while at the same time cushioning the social impact. One word to finish about the focus on coal. I just would like to remind some figures, and notably the figures in terms of CO2 emissions per capita within the EU. The lowest country in terms of emissions per capita is Latvia, with 3.6 tons of CO2 per inhabitant. Luxembourg, 20.7 tons of CO2 per capita. Poland, 8.4, and Belgium, just to blame my own country, 9.1 country. It means that, okay, it's good to focus on coal, and obviously there is no serious decarbonization strategy without a strong decrease and maybe, and of course, at some stage, a phase out of coal consumption in the EU. But while focusing on coal, we shouldn't forget all the other economic sectors which emit a lot of CO2 emissions. I would like also to open to launch a question: is a CO2 molecule equivalent to another CO2 molecule? The physicist will be, of course, yes. The sociologist will be, it depends. One CO2 ton emitted, for instance, to warm a house in the south of Poland or Romania, is maybe not equivalent to a ton of CO2 which is emitted by a Range Rover around in the suburbs of Brussels. We should bear in mind that there is a social dimension in the way we account, we present CO2 emissions. Thank you.
Bien, le damos la palabra.
Okay, I'm now going to give the floor to Matthew Lay, who is Vice President of EPSU. He's also speaking for his national officer at Unison. Matthew.
So the concept and need for just transition has been the subject of much debate within EPSU over the last few years. That debate has taken place at many levels, but within the energy sector it has been a core feature of our work programme within our own European Standing Committee on Public Utilities and in the European Union's Electricity Sector Social Dialogue Committee. As representatives of EPSU and our own respective unions, we have looked to the debate to debate key issues both at a European level but also importantly domestically. We all face similar challenges, and we all recognise how important it is that we address those challenges together and coordinate our responses. So within the Sectoral Social Dialogue Committee for Electricity, we have been discussing this issue with employers as well to look at and agree joint positions that we can put to the Commission and seek to influence European policy making. Within the EPSU movement, we have long recognised and supported the notion that there can be no jobs on a dead planet. But in turn, we have sought to find solutions, actual solutions, to how we can address both the climate change challenge and at the same time retain secure employment for workers in those areas of the economy that have the greatest impact on the climate. In my own area, that specifically covers the energy sector, and much debate is focused on how we can transform that sector so it can deliver for consumers, retain the skilled employment and good jobs, but also reach its objective of carbon-free generation and supply. But in truth, we must say, and it has to be said, that in some parts of the energy sector we are losing the debate, as workers are fearful of losing their jobs, which are relatively good in the wider economy, and their livelihoods, and they are reverting to the comfortable position of a security-first mindset. This position is not helped when carefree politicians make it a cause to deny climate change and promise a reversal of environmental protections and investments in carbon-free strategies. But it is where we are, and we must respond, not simply by labelling those workers as irresponsible, but trying to really address their concerns and critically allay their fears. Growing up as I did in a coal mining area of England, I witnessed at first hand the devastation of the Thatcher pit closure programme. Some of those communities that were affected have not recovered still 30 years later. In the US, we have recently witnessed the election of Donald Trump, with the strong backing of many energy workers, particularly the traditional blue workers in places like Pennsylvania, who have been convinced that their only secure livelihood is by rejecting the climate change process. The old saying is that turkeys will not vote for Christmas, and we must make sure we don't put energy workers in that position. We cannot both demand environmental change and at the same time not have an industrial strategy that makes it clear how we're going to keep the lights on, homes warm and workers in good, secure employment. Without that strategy, workers in the energy sector will eventually reject the calls of others to support reform. For EPSU and my own trade union Unison, Just Transition, the journey of workers to move seamlessly from polluting to non-polluting employment, is therefore massive. We are not just seeking words or paper commitments, we are seeking actions, otherwise we ourselves recognise the consequences are dire. It is for that reason that I went with a small EPSU delegation to the COP21 this time last year to lobby for the inclusion of the requirements of just transition into the wording of the legal text of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Although some say we failed, as it only made it into the preamble, the very fact that international trade unions came together to lobby for this showed our determination to use whatever influence we can possible to raise the just transition cause. Within EPSU, we have been seeking to use our influence to support the calls for the European Just Transition Fund, funded through environmental levies like the ETS, to provide the necessary resources to support strategic reform. Such a fund needs to have many billions of euros available over many years to deliver the scale of change that is required to support just transition. We have also demanded and continue to demand that the voice of the worker is heard at every level and given full recognition in the just transition pathway. But let us be honest, the greatest challenge that we face, it's not a resources one or an engagement one, it is the direction, authority and political will that is required. As it stands, the liberal free market, espoused by many governments and the EU itself, is totally unsuitable at the moment to deliver the just transition because it needs proper planning and infrastructure to address the needs of workers and climate change simultaneously. Rather than seeking to pitch worker against environmentalist, we should recognise that workers and environmentalists are seeking the similar things, and many of course would describe themselves as both. With the right political will to support the strategic direction required, we could deliver the just transition that we need and move it on from simply a convenient slogan. Examples of the actions required include the renewal of the transmission network to accommodate local renewable generation, the development of significant carbon capture and storage projects, and something that I believe would be a game changer, the transformation of the methane gas supply across Europe into a hydrogen-supplied system providing carbon-free gas to homes and businesses, but critically utilising the skills of thousands of workers because the technology already exists. Finally, we require a massive energy efficiency programme that aspires to the best standards across Europe, ensuring that every home across Europe is at least up to an EPC C rating. These are the actions that would require, that would deliver a just transition. These are the actions that would secure for workers a sustainable future going forward and give them hope that that future includes them. But such developments are unlikely, if not impossible, in the present marketplace because they require investments to be made for the long term. They require producers to support efforts to reduce consumption, and they need clear political direction. So when we say we are going to do it, we need to deliver and not change our minds. For us, the issue is so critically important. After the Second World War, Europe rebuilt itself, driven by a political will that never again should conflict rage across these shores. In truth, nothing less than such a political will across Europe will suffice to deliver the just transition we need. And without that, we will all pay a very heavy price. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Now we're going to be hearing from José Luis Villares from Comisiones Obreras, from the industry sector and the mining, for mining workers. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, we in Industrial Comisiones Obreras have been talking about the idea of just transition, not recently. In the 1990s, we tried, and I say tried, because we and the people who were governing us tried to achieve this, but didn't succeed. But what I'm going to be focusing on in my presentation is that it is possible to adopt a different transition model, and that can be fair in economic, politically, and certainly in a social way. In 1998, we took up the challenge on orders from the European Union, saying that we had to cut down jobs in the coal sector to try to replace those jobs with other ones. We knew that some jobs would be lost from coal. We wanted to replace them with others. So the first thing that we started to do was to see if we could match the needs of regions, of mining regions, which are often isolated, with the provision of infrastructure. Interruption.
Hay un problema con...
Apparently there's a problem with the German interpretation. I think perhaps we can go on now. Can we hear the German interpretation coming through? Yes?
Okay.
Apparently seems to be working now.
It's okay?
Bien, decía...
Okay, so can we go on to the next slide, please? No? You can't hear me? Right. So I was saying that the first thing we had to do, and I say this because in Spain and in other countries I know as well, mining regions are isolated from the main ecological and technological axes. So we had to find major infrastructure. I'm here talking about the late 20th century in Spain, when we had there was an increase by 25% that needed to be made up for in regional funding. We had to try to promote the needs of isolated pockets of population, because mining regions in Spain often had left lots of pollution which had to be cleaned up before other businesses could come in. And the type of infrastructure that was needed was transport, communications, water supply, and cleaning of tourist locations, etc. So here on the next slide, you can see the distribution of funds by regional community, and particularly loss of jobs per sector. Most money went to the areas where the most jobs were lost. And the second part of our challenge was for these mining regions was to see how we could make use of available funding in order to make business projects more accessible and more realistic. Basically, those startup projects focused on the need to reduce the impact of the loss of mining jobs. We knew already that it's very difficult to take 1,000 mine workers out of a hole in the ground and re-employ them on the surface of the ground in the same area. It was a huge challenge. So we knew that we needed to provide for a transition for mining regions so that they would be able to develop other types of economic growth, ones which would make better use of human and natural resources. So those local businesses often used former mine workers, depending on the region. Here you can see our job creation jobs. This was from the period 1998 to 2005. On the next slide, we see the job forecast. We see that 17,000 jobs were lost, but 14,000 jobs have been created. So we're going in the right direction. These are new jobs that have nothing to do with mining. On the next slide, you can see percentages for each regional community of the former mining jobs which have been switched to other types of jobs. For example, in Castilla-La Mancha, more than 200% of the jobs which had been lost from mining were created in other sectors. Varies from region to region. Here, this is another important point. We needed to come up with a formula for reactivating and retraining the mining workforce. So we needed to provide training for young people, particularly, so that they could get out of the coal industry, which didn't have any future, so that the new generations had a new, constantly changing model of work. So we set up a foundation, and they focused on two courses of action. First was a study scholarship, so people could get a scholarship to study graduate or undergraduate or graduate studies in Spain or in other countries as well. Many people went to other parts of Spain or even other countries so that they could come back with the knowledge and work in other sectors. And we also had other types of funding for managers of new businesses trying to prepare for other types of economic activity as well. So now we go to the period from 2006 to 2012. We still had the same focal points of action because they had started to bear fruit. We had less money in this period. We still kept working on infrastructure and information and training, but we realized that basically infrastructure had been provided. So of the funding that we had available, we made most of that. We used most of it for actual business plans for new startups. In this period from 2006 to 2012, you see that there are fewer new startup projects. Here on the next slide, I'm not sure if this is the right one. Is this the right one? Next one, please. Here you can see the job forecast, which is much less than the previous period. Then on the next slide, Again, we see the percentage of jobs much less than before, and that brings us up to the present situation in former mining regions. As we've heard described by lots of other people, we still have much higher unemployment than in other parts of the country, constant rural exodus in mining regions, very few jobs, particularly high qualified jobs, are created, lower rate of education, lower rate of female employment in general. It seems that the government has abandoned these mining regions. So it's something that we've still seen, just like in other parts, continuing stagnation, poverty, and social exclusion. Now, what was the reason for the lack of results despite our initial success? Well, it was quite simple, because politicians made use of that money in order to get rid of investment in mining regions. That's something which was a policy decision. They instead decided to use the money for other purposes. They used that money in order to create museums, swimming pools, and social centers, cultural centers, and 90% of those have shut down now because they can't be maintained. They had nothing to offer the people who used to working in the mining industry. And hand in hand with the economic crisis affecting thousands of businesses in the country, obviously it's had an impact on businesses in former mining regions as well. So since we don't have the necessary commitment and support from central government, we haven't succeeded. At every stage of taking decisions for any project, you saw politicians from all across the political spectrum failing to support local development in ways which would provide jobs. There were a number of small and medium-sized businesses which we had helped to get started. But they didn't have access to the necessary funding, and particularly after 2011, things went very wrong indeed. There, I think it's fair to say that politicians completely failed to respect their agreements with trade unions. They eliminated all support, and right now we've got a situation which doesn't help anyone. There's no support for people who've lost their jobs, and I think that the only chance that we have to effect a just transition to a post-carbon society in mining regions is to work not in a centralist way, but we have to pool resources. We have to pool the use of public resources in order to bring about a just transition that has to be guided by politically independent leadership. We have to make sure that social and economic transition is viable in a European context as well. That's very important. If we're going to be giving money to local regions, then those regions have to share that money with local government, and basically it all ends up being squandered. So it's not coordinated. I think we have to undertake a study of best practice in various European regions in moving away from the carbon industry and replacing mining jobs. Until we can do that, we're just going to see more mines being shut down and jobs being lost without being replaced. We can't do that. We have to maintain the jobs that we have. We have to make sure that people remain in employment. Obviously, people are going to continue to use coal in future as well to some extent. We've got some 3,000 jobs right now dependent directly on coal, and until such time as we have a viable alternative, we have to continue those jobs, maintain them, and maintain the industry that supports them. Thank you.
Siento.
Well, yes, we are under time pressure, but It's important, and we will have some time to discuss this. Marc Delapouve from the National Syndicate for Higher Education. Marc, go ahead, please.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I will insist on the fact that a decarbonized energy is not automatically a clean energy, and is not automatically, of course, a fair energy, a just energy. So, if you want to achieve a clean and fair energy at the European level and at the global level, we need a wide research program. We can't achieve this goal without a wide research program. And this wide research program must be very different, must be in a very different way than the current research in Europe and in the world. At the first step of my speech, I will speak about opinion and mandate of my union, the SNESUP FSU, the major union of higher education and research in France. Today, the policy of the European Union on research is based on the idea of innovation process, starting from basic research all the way to launching innovative goods and services on the market, included product design and marketing, only for public research, for public research. This orientation was so defined in 2011 when the European Commission drafted the 8th EU research program. Today, nearly all that is left from the EU is a business union. In Europe, society, women and men, are more and more submitted to markets and major cooperation by the EU and its member states. We must free the EU from this devastating policy, and we must launch an entirely different political project for its citizens. The policy research of the EU and of its member states must contribute to this goal. We are going through a European and global crisis. Therefore, the role of research must be redefined. Today, research is more and more channeled, ill-used and weakened in order to satisfy markets and transnational companies. On the contrary, research must question and shed a critical light on the current system. Research must contribute to the design and the implementation of an alternative to the current development mode. The EU and its member states must implement a public research plan with an unprecedented ambition, knowing that the EU and its member states altogether have the financial and human means to do so. This plan must be based on European and international cooperation. It must aim at increasing knowledge and basic research that is indispensable for the future. This plan must also help the ecological, social and democratic transition from technological progress to the necessary transformation of the system. Research in social sciences must play a major role in this ecological, social and democratic transition. For example, through an analysis of what weakens and threatens democracy. Research in social sciences could design and publicize ways to rekindle democracy. It must contribute to empower people to think freely and critically. Now, after that, I will speak about a work of Transform, because thanks to Transform Europe, I participate to the e-dossier, A New Energy to Change Europe. And I wrote one of the chapters towards responsible research. Now, let me present some central ideas of this text. This text is not a very short text, and my speech will be very, very short. It will be a pity, but it's a necessity now. Energy transition is an urgent issue. It requires an ambitious political program, mainly aimed at environmental and social improvement, of course. Research must be an important and necessary component of this program. Before addressing the research component of such a political program, let us take an overview of current research. The EU and European government have decided to increase more and more international free trades and international free circulation of capital. The consequences have been both domination by transnational companies and a very high level of economic competition between nations. One of the key weapons used in this competition is innovation, more specifically, a commercial kind of innovation. Finally, the choices regarding research priorities, research means allocation, and research general organization are increasingly guided by the requirement to defend and strengthen the competitiveness of the regions of Europe, and are increasingly dominated by transnational companies. In such a context, it is not surprising to see the difficulties, even the quasi-paralysis, that humankind experiences when faced with the turning upside down of the Earth system and with the urgent need of an energy transition. Without delay, the EU must decide on a wide research program free from international markets and transnational companies. This wide research program should be coordinated across Europe and with the voluntary participation of non-European partners based on scientific collaboration and not on neoliberal anti-scientific competition of each one against all others. Beyond technological aspects, the transition must include the transformation of economic production, consumption patterns, societal organization, way of life, and thus a transformation of mindsets, values, and aspirations. The Earth population may take responsibility for this transition. Each individual must be convinced that this transition must happen. Each individual must support it and participate in it with solidarity and responsibility. In order to achieve this, Europe and its member states must deeply rethink their research policy, including research beyond technology. For instance, it is absolutely necessary to develop research on society foundation and models, drawing, among others, on the legacy of thinkers and philosophers, anthropologists and historians, as well as on the most recent and ongoing experiences of democratization, emancipation, and empowerment. For my union, I suppose for Transform, if we want to win, if we want to achieve a real and consequent transition, we need to think globally. We need to think to the Earth, to Europe, and we need to think to launch a progressively transformation of the system. And we need, in the same time, to think about a lot of detail, what sort of experiences happen locally, but we need, at the same time, to mobilize at the global level and at the European level with an other idea of the society, with an other idea of the relation within people, within the persons and the people, and if we stay only at a too much technological level, we will not be in capacity to mobilize the population. We need to build a new narrative story of the world, of the humanity. If we don't do that, we will always behind the narrative story of the neoliberal adversary. And Thank you for your attention.
Bien, os agradezco mucho.
Thank you very much for sticking to the time allocated, which means that we now have a bit more time for the debate. As I was saying at the beginning, we'll have all the questions first, and then we'll give the panel 4 minutes or so to respond. So we've heard very interesting, very comprehensive presentations. You have the floor for any questions or comments.
Mein Name ist Jana Pinka, ich komme aus Sachsen.
I'm Jana Pico from Saxon. My question is as follows. I have accompanied many European research projects. I'm very well aware of Horizon 2020, but my question is, what are your thoughts on the neoliberal approach linked to Horizon 2020? How can we have a research project that can provide for that society change? How do you imagine that taking place? Who should be involved? I know we have left-wing minorities in the European Parliament.
Thank you, Paloma. My name is Manuela Kropp. I work in the European Parliament on energy policy for Cornelia Ernst. Just a comment to summarize the first and the second panel. I think we have to understand that the austerity policy is threatening any climate action. In November this year, the European Court of Auditors published a report and showed that the European Commission and the spending of the structural funds already falls short for climate action. They don't meet their own targets. So I think what we need is a public investment program. We need a strengthening of the public sectors. And we should demand a just transition strategy at the European level, a strong governance system which obliges the member states to be active in this respect. Thank you.
¿Más preguntas, cuestiones, dudas?
Any other questions, doubts, comments?
I just want to show an example how life looks like when you are already out from the coal industry, because Hungary have closed all the coal mines just during the changes. And what happens when you're not producing any coal, but you're able to import coal? I will show you a map in which, oh gosh, where's my map here? Show you around. In one part of this map, it is very brown. You might say that that is an outdated industrial area, but it's not. It's an absolutely agricultural area. And I will show you another map. This map is showing the poverty from eastern and western Hungary and central Hungary, and it's showing that the pollution is coming exactly from the places where the pollution is very high. 5 years ago, the biggest polluters were the cars and the transportation, and right now it's heating. The change is that people are heating with everything what's possible, anything what burns. Imagine that we are a leftist party and we are working together with the coal miners and the coal miners are giving us the conference room, and every month we organize a conference there, and once a year we are remembering together with the coal miners on the Coal Miners' Day, and we are singing together. And if you have seen 30, 40 people crying together, adults, I'm talking about between 40, 60 years of age, then you will understand the problem. Of course, they all understood that this shift must go through, but if peoples are pushed to deep poverty, this is one of the biggest crimes that one can produce. Practically, we are coming up with a new idea to lower VIT, which is 27% in Hungary, and if only for the winter the VIT will drop for 13.5%, we think that the level of pollution would change. This wouldn't help actually the people in the deepest poverty, but it will help a lot of people. And of course, I think that the VIT, we are convinced on that, will be not less. So the government's income will be not less, because if somebody is just closing the tap in order to open it, they are not opening it to consume gas at all. They are heating with very old systematic, with wood and mainly with waste. That is giving a possibility for tax also. Right now in these areas, the pollution is more than 10 times higher than ever before. And 70% of all pollution is coming from the heating. This is happening during the winter days. Imagine that in this year, the winter is just started, only in Hungary, more than 100 people have frozen. 33 of them, 1/3 of it, are frozen in their homes. So this is something that we must understand, and we have to govern practically the price of gas, and because practically the gas is imported, and some politicians are putting an extra percentage on the price of gas because they created an own company which is putting an extra tax on it. Practically it's a tax, it's a profit. This is the type of corruption that we have to point to, and this is what must be changed in the next coming years. And we need really the support of that, and we are happy to work on this problem in the future. And I hope, because I think I already used my time, I will have the word again on the same topic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have a question concerning, because it has been several times mentioned, the creation of transition fund, and you have Benjamin mentioned that it could be the solution to finance all the investment needed in the energy transition sector. Could you explain a little bit how do you see such a fund could should function? Because you have, if the ETS system is still not functioning, what can you expect in the future because of the very low carbon price? Then you have first to fix this problem, and then expect that the fund will deliver what it should deliver. And the second question is around the European Union created several years ago, I think it was 2011, energy efficient European fund, the so-called triple EF. It is several members of the parliaments in this room, and they are sitting in the energy committee of the parliament. Do they know what are the results of that fund? Because if we are speaking about European financing instrument, financing fund. So maybe we should look at what are the results from the fund which have been already created. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Let's say that there will be two types of transitions. One transition will be by those that accept that the transition is needed, have a plan, have dates, when do we close, have idea what we want to do in the future, more or less given. But there will be a limited amount of money as always, because money is always limited. And then you will have the second group of let's say municipalities or regions that are saying we don't know what to do, but the consequences are grave. We have so many workers, and we can't really shut down because it will be a social tragedy. So I would like to have a question to maybe the speaker, but also people around the room. How do we actually make sure that the money goes to those who want to transition in the first place, no matter how many people they employ, and not being used as a barrier or a staller, as a subsidy in a sense of stalling the transition? And I would be really grateful to have this. I mean, the Just Transition Fund is really nicely designed. Let me applaud to those who have been working on it to work on the restructuring of workers and not providing subsidy for utilities. But I would want to maybe get their heads around how to make the best use that this money goes to actually those who want to transition faster with good plans and not be used by the others.
Yes, my name is Rolf Tschiskleva-Dupont and I come from Denmark, the Red Green Alliance. I have a historical question in a way. Is there anybody here who can remember that in the 1990s was established what was called the European Investment Fund? Not bank, but the investment fund. But it has been opposed by the German government from the beginning because it was a proposal from the Delors Commission. And this blockade has continued, and now we have the austerity politics and the slogan of no transfer union. I think we have to address this question to go against this no to the transfer union. Obviously, we have the question now not only regarding the relations between countries, but also relations within countries. And I think the organizing Die Linke has a responsibility to go into this question because it has been the German government since the 1990s who has mandated this austerity politics. Thank you.
Eine kurze, Uwe Witz, Linksfraktion im Bundestag.
Uwe Witz, I come from the left-wing group in local council. You said that we can only have a just transition if the transition itself is accepted, socially accepted. I would like to know your appreciation of German trade unions. We often get the feeling that we're actually being shunted out, pushed away by the the mainstream trade unions, which is against this type of transition. So it seems that Verdi particularly is actually fighting against the interests of trade union representatives in the sector. So that was perhaps a question I could put to Mr. Perch. What does he feel in his Lausitz project? Are you really in favor of this type of transition from the workers' point of view? I remember that I think just the other week, one of your representatives said that you were against plans for a new open pit mine. But if you're not going to stop a new open pit mine, how are you going to serve the interests of the thousands of people who stand to gain from that sort of transition?
Mein Name ist Roland Kulke. Ich
I'm Rola Kulpa. I'm from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation here in Brussels. I just wanted to come in to the discussion on the point about funding and how we can imagine a just transition fund at European level and how that would be implemented. We have to think about transparency and effectiveness. I think talking about these issues at this level, thinking about 2016, COP21, and how quickly the banks were saved overnight. With all of that, I don't think that we have to give a clear answer as to where the money is going to come from. It's absolutely clear to me. I've experienced this live. The money is there in Brussels when it's deemed to be relevant to the system, because behind the scenes there are specific interests and powers. That's what we need to change. If we think that just transition is a matter of system relevance, then we need to make that clear, in which case the money will be there. Second thing is, if you imagine such a fund and it gets the support, how can you make sure that it really works, that there's no corruption? Let me give you an example. Say, take India. It's the most corrupt country you can imagine. With a massive pressure from civil society, they came up with a law a few years ago which says that each family can be employed for 100 days per year, paid for by the state for relevant infrastructure projects. That made people proud because they were needed by their community, and it's also a perfect example of how you can act with by reducing corruption with this radical democracy. It was a bottom-up type project. The energy house, the civil society, faith organizations, everyone was involved. If you manage to do that in such a corrupt country as India, then we should be able to manage it as well. That is, that if we want to have long-term projects, long-term goals, then we should be able to implement them. Thank you.
Bueno, yo creo que ha habido preguntas suficientes.
Okay, I think we've had enough questions now. Very interesting ones. But we are going to turn over to the speakers so that we can hear their response. So let's take them again in the same order that they spoke at the beginning. Benjamin.
Well, if I have to answer all the questions, I think that we should agree on skipping the lunch. No, there is no consensus, so I will select one of the few questions. I will answer many questions addressed our proposal to set up a just transition fund. First, let me remind that the just transition fund proposal is in the context of the revision of the emissions trading system for the period post-2020, so 2021-2030. Of course, our main demand within that debate is to fix the system, because, as you said, the current carbon price is really too low, around €5 a ton for too long now, and obviously it's too weak to drive investment towards the low carbon technologies. It's too low to trigger a shift from coal to gas, and really too low to trigger a shift from gas to renewables. That's absolutely obvious. So that's why first message while discussing the ETS is make sure that the price signal will be significant to drive economic choices towards low carbon choices. Having said that, the Commission in its proposal proposed to create two funds. Innovation Fund to catalyze technological innovation to develop low carbon technologies, Innovation Fund on the one hand, and Modernization Fund. Modernization Fund is dedicated to the modernization of energy system within member states which are below 60% of the EU average in terms of GDP per capita. Without worth adding to that landscape a specific financial instrument dedicated not to industrial innovation, not to infrastructure modernization, but to the human capital, to the people. Because in the current landscape, there is nothing to really specifically address the concerns, the situation of workers which are still relying on CO2 activities. You could say, okay, but there is the European Social Fund, there are plenty of instruments. Yes, this is true, but two remarks. We are talking about the post-2020 period. Most of the existing instruments are in the context of the MFF, the Multi-Annual Financial Framework for the EU, which goes from 2014 to 2020. So beyond 2020, what the financial landscape of EU budget will look like is not known yet. So we think worth in that context to say, okay, in that future landscape, we will need something specific for workers from regions, from sectors which still highly rely on CO2 activities. First remark. Second remark, we don't see the Just Transition Fund as the panacea. It will not be the answer. It will be one answer among others. We will, of course, need additional tools. We will, of course, need to ensure that there will be complementarities, synergies between, on the one hand, the regional funds, the European Social Fund, and the Just Transition Fund. But we thought worth having something really specific for these workers. We should also bear in mind that the current tools we have to manage restructuring processes, the EU Fund for Adjustment to Globalization. Again, we are talking about the 2014-2020 period. Nothing, we don't know yet whether this fund will exist beyond the current MFF. And I would like also to stress the fact that if you go back to the 2 degrees target, and if you translate that 2-degree target into concrete emissions roadmap, emissions pathways, we have in front of us a restructuring of a scope of a pace which is absolutely new in human history and in EU history, of course. So with the currently, I guess it's 150 million a year, which is available in this EU Adjustment Fund to Globalization. It's obviously not enough to address all the challenges, the social challenges related to decarbonization. And the Just Transition will not be enough as well. We will need complementary instruments at EU level and also at national level. That's absolutely obvious. How to avoid corruption? That's the 100 million question. Of course, this is something we will have to pay attention to. In terms of governance, it will be up to the Parliament, to the Council, to the Commission to really define how concretely it could work. But one clear message we have conveyed since the beginning is that we need to ensure that local social partners, local employers and local trade unions must have their say in the way the money will be used. The transition cannot be done without a right of workers to have their say in the process. It's absolutely obvious. In 2 words maybe about energy poverty. This is indeed something which we consider as an absolute priority for the trade union movement. We know that nowadays in the EU there are more than 10% of the households which cannot pay their energy bill at the end of the month. We have seen positive elements in the new package that the Commission released last week, but not enough. And we will work with EPSU notably on a strategy to ensure that something like a right to energy is acknowledged in the EU law, because we know that access to energy prices are one of the main drivers of social exclusion right now, and this is something we have to work on. I will leave the other questions to the other panelists. panelists maybe.
Matthew, before.
So, probably actually was going to add to what Benjamin has said on a couple of issues. Firstly, with regard to the Just Transition Fund, again, that in many ways is only a part of the journey that we need to go on. Everyone recognises that we need resources to transform the system. In truth, the actual size of the task is absolutely huge. And when you look at the amount of energy we consume now and the amount of energy we will be consuming in 2050, to achieve a carbon-free position, it looks an insurmountable challenge, but it can be done. And I think this goes to the very point of what I wanted to say. It can be done. The technology is there, but what it requires is a systematic approach. What it requires is a strategy that people accept and buy into, which transforms the way we produce energy and the way we distribute it and supply it to homes. It cannot be done piecemeal, and it cannot be done without a view to longer-term decisions being taken that you get you to that point. Which is why, for instance, when you look at, say, gas, programs to bring about the transformation of methane-based gas to hydrogen gas can be done. It can be actually achieved, but it is not something you can leave to a region. It's not something you can leave even to a nation state. It has to be done by harnessing everybody's abilities and harnessing across Europe the various mechanisms and technologies that can make that a reality. I heard the colleague from Hungary's experiences and recognised them because, as I say, I grew up in a mining area that was devastated in the 80s with mass closure programs, which those communities have not recovered. So it's not a great position. But in terms of fuel poverty, again, this is in many ways on fuel poverty. It's a no-brainer, frankly. The solution is there. We could, if we chose with the right will, retrofit homes across Europe to make sure they met the best standards that are already there. So if you go to a place like Sweden, on average, homes in Sweden require 3 times less energy use than a home in the UK, simply to stay warm. It is that simple. But, we all sit around sort of gesticulating and raising these concerns, but we don't deliver. And we have to persuade people that is what we need to do, and that is the direction of travel that we're going into. Because if we don't, and I see this constantly, I see it in the UK, I see it across Europe, and we've seen it in the US, we are losing the argument. Make no mistake about it, we are losing the argument. Energy workers are fearful of the future. They have families who are fearful for the future. They talk to people who recognise those fears. We have to come up with a coherent plan very, very quickly. It won't be deliverable today and it won't be happening tomorrow, but it will be a plan that we can buy into and work and make it work. And I just wanted to echo colleague on the left. Absolutely, what it does need is it needs to be underpinned with intellectual rigour, because too many people are questioning the science, too many people are arguing against what we're saying, and we need to have those intellectual arguments to sustain us going forward.
Sí.
Yes, thank you. Well, it certainly is not an easy question. I think we all agree that in Europe, and I would say specifically in Spain, for decades now we've seen attempts to close down mines. Decades, I say, but ever since 1980, I'll explain this, but ever since 1980, we've actually failed to set up some sort of basic plan for the transition that we've been discussing. A transition which really hasn't borne fruit because of the problems that I mentioned before. I think we have to realize what mining regions are are like. There are lots of them. I've seen lots of them in Europe. They're, of course, not all the same. But there's one basic feature that's common to all of them. Almost all mining districts have one basic feature, which is they are isolated from the center of life in terms of transport or communication. And that means that miners historically have a specific type of mindset, and it's very difficult for them, for us, to understand, to come to terms with the fact that mining is over. That's important. If we don't realize that mining is over, that the use of coal is over, I said at the very beginning, my first slide, I said we should all agree that this is a transition towards a different type of energy model. If we don't understand that, if we don't realize it, then I don't think we can really change. The first thing we have to change is European policy. We cannot continue to work in a European Union. I'm not just talking about coal. You see it in other types of raw materials, textiles, etc. But we can't continue to close down local industries and replace them by cheap imports from abroad. Most imported in coal, this is one statistic from Spain last year, there were 20 million tons of coal burned to create energy, but only 3 million of that 20 million were national. All the rest was imported. Most of that imported coal comes from Indonesia, Colombia, and South Africa in order of importance. And I was with my colleagues in Indonesia. I was in Colombia. They don't. What they fail to respect is not just labor law. They don't respect human rights, and there are other sectors for which that's true as well. So it is a complete violation of human rights. We can't accept a policy of import substitution. We can't. What we have to do is to save mining districts which have been dependent on a mining monoculture for more than 100 years. That's something that has to change in Europe and in countries such as Spain. We have a long-standing trade union tradition in mining regions, and we see that all of a sudden, for party political reasons, people are spending money, but they're not spending it in the proper way. They're spending it in a way which doesn't serve anyone's interests. So there are political vested interests. Financing, obviously, is important. I don't want to go into details about money. I'm a miner. We've got politicians here. There are good politicians. They have to find the right models for adequate financing. And obviously, none of this can be done without involving citizens. Of course, we have to involve trade unions and the workers, but we have to involve society at large in this effort as well. And we have to make sure that we don't see what's happening in Hungary. We're just going to close down the mines and sit back and see what happens. No, we have to plan. There's not much use of coal in Spain. It's only 3,000 jobs. It's not huge, but those jobs are in traditional mining regions. And as I've often say, if we just save one, for example, in Asturias, then one might be saved, but there are lots and lots of others which are going to fall by the wayside because they're all isolated. So as long as that's the case, we have to continue to use the resources that we have. We have geothermal energy, that's another source, it's clean. There's biomass, another very important region. Many coal mines are surrounded by forest land, which has not been tapped. And I think one thing that's absolutely clear is that there are lots of political interests here. Obviously, European politics works through lobbies, and the interests of the electricity lobby that is stronger than government, than government political will. So that all has to change. Finally, I'd like to convey to you something that a French mining colleague said to me when I went to visit him in his part of France. He said that we're being told to shut down the mines and to import coal from abroad. That's made us poorer than we ever were before. And the worst thing is that the people in the other parts of the world where the coal is being imported from aren't getting richer, where we were becoming poorer. That's an important quote, I think, to leave you with.
Three short topics. The first one, with my colleague, I express the very important role of unions to mobilize the workers and to mobilize the society. And the fact that unions are invited today is a very good thing, and thank you. The second one, until now, renewable energy are not enough clean energy. We could not use the current renewable energy at the global level. It will be impossible. We need to improve the renewable energy to get cleaner and cheaper renewable energy. Renewable energy must not be only for the big town for the town and the common of the north. Renewable energy must be for everybody all over the world. Some very rare material are used for several renewable energy. We have not sufficient rare material for this, for example. Another example, some material today used for renewable energy are very nasty. Nasty? Yeah. Are very nasty in China, in Africa, and so. And we need to think to all the people of the world, not only for European people. So we need really a wide research program, not organized as the current European program, because the current European program is a lot of a small program with a too short term. The link between business and research and public research is it's at a very high level in Europe, and the business want short-term profit, and the aim to short-term profit, it's correct? Short-term profit? Yeah. The aim to short-term profit is a contradiction with the time that is needed to make research. Also, all this little program is not a big program, and we need a big program. An example is today discussed at the international level in the scientist organization. This example is the Manhattan Project, a very bad one because it was to build the bomb atomic. But we can, the scientists at the international level, not in the union, outside union, the scientists at the international level with the IPCC begin to think about a sort of Manhattan program for save the climate, for boost the energy transition. But I think that we can build a Manhattan program at the European level for energy transition. We must a big program with a big ambition. My third topic is about the fund. But for my union, for all what we want, more or less, we need a left and ecological project at the European level. At this time, nobody perhaps this project exists, but nobody speak about it. Nobody believe in it. It's not in the landscape, in the political landscape. In the political landscape, we have the Social Democrat program, the right Social Democrat program, and we have the right program and the extreme right program. Everybody know more or less these programs, but nobody know a left program, a left and ecological program at the European level. It's a pity, and for the union, as my union, it's a very, it's really a pity because we can't mobilize our workers because we have no vision of the future. We have no common vision. We have only the vision of the adversary. And how can we mobilize our workers? It's impossible because our workers don't believe in anything. They believe in nothing because they have no picture of another future, ecological and left, in the landscape, in the political landscape. It was an appeal for everybody to work all together in this direction. I know that GOE exists. I know that Left Party exists, of course, and Transform exists, because I'm a militant of Transform. But we need to be more good in communication and so to help people to mobilize. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Le voy a dar un minuto, por favor.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I'm going to give 1 minute to our colleague from the German Trade Union. Yes, there was a question that was put to me. As we've heard, we're going to have to discuss these things further. But last Tuesday, a major German newspaper, the Taz, published a forum where they reported about the future of the Lausitz project and of the move away from coal. Some 20 people came and participated in that discussion, and it was a major debate. And many people there actually occupied the open pit mine. There's lots of protest action going on, including involving miners, and some of those miners are represented here today. And one mayor there was asked, she was a mayor in one of the cities in the Lausitz region, and she asked about the new mining regions in the region. She said, quote, she asked if she would be in favor of a new mine. She said, quote, "I hope it will not be necessary," end quote. So that's the statement, that's her exact statement here and published in the German press. So we've met with Verdi. I've been a member of Verdi for 25 years myself. So even though some 2,000 people are represented there, we've actually we've got an opinion from Verdi on the move away from coal, and we've included we've taken a couple of questions from that. I can let you know what they say quite briefly. They say they talk about very labor-intensive jobs in mining, and they also talk about the possible consequences for the industry and the impact for jobs, which they say hasn't been addressed. They also say that we need more financing for social plans which have not received sufficient attention from public authorities, which they accuse of being irresponsible. So the whole question of the social consequences is very important. We've heard about what's happening in other countries. We cannot just sit by and let that happen. So we've tried to start a dialogue with trade union representatives. I'd be very happy to extend the invitation to you to come to the local government and to engage in this constructive dialogue with us.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much to all of you for your participation in this round. I know that there are a few people remaining who wanted to speak, but we're very much under time pressure. We're going to break for lunch now, and at 2:30 we will resume. So please be on time at 2:30. Thank you very much.